Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for jumping on to watch the live session. Or if you're on the JPC members only platform, Smarter You platform, watching the recording tomorrow or weeks or months or years from now, I want to thank you for investing in yourself and thank you for giving us your time and attention today for a very special guest. I have Miss Tonya DeVane from Omnia Group here. For agency owners and managers out there, if you're looking for an amazing assessment provider that can be a resource for you in terms of coaching and developing your current team members, but also as you're recruiting, I've looked at 4 or 5 different assessment vendors and companies over the past 13, 14 years, something like that. Omnia has been by far the best. They're fantastic to work with. It's not cookie cutter. They have a customized plan that you can also use. For example, several years ago, I had an amazing producer at our agency, and we wanted to kind of model an assessment around what she was doing, and they were able to customize that for me. So, no more cookie cutter assessments. Customize what you can do to find out what your team members' strengths are and what their areas of opportunities are, and how to coach and develop and lead them so they can reach their full potential. There is not a single better company than Omnia. So we have a special guest today, Tonya, here to represent or to present a presentation called "There's No Crying in Sales," and it makes me think about the League of Their Own,
Yeah.
right? The League of Their Own, where Tom Hanks is like, "Why are you crying? There's no crying in baseball," right? Y'all remember that? Now, some of you are so young, you're like, "What's a League of Their Own?" It's the guy from Toy Story, y'all. It's the guy
Right.
from Toy Story. But with that said, Miss Devane, thank you for Omnia and for your time today. I appreciate you. But with all that said, I'm going to pass it to you to deliver some valuable information to our members today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, as we get started, or before we really dig in, what I want is when I ask you to, I want you to close your eyes. And when you think 30 seconds has elapsed, just go ahead and put a 5 in the chat. So, you can use 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, but nothing digital, analog, or anything like that. It's just all your internal clock. So again, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. When you think 30 seconds has elapsed, go ahead and throw a 5 in the chat for me. And let's go ahead and close our eyes. And stop. All right, if you still have your eyes closed, you passed 30 seconds. But I did see, Joseph, you opened your eyes first. It was about 27 seconds, 27, 28. I've had people open it as quick as 16 seconds. And I do this exercise, especially when I'm doing the no crying in sales, is because we all have our own internal clocks, different internal clocks, right? And so that's exactly is what's happening when you're coaching your team or when you're on a team. It's about we all have these different times. We have these different strengths. So it's about bringing them all together to really help in regards to make the team stronger and make you stronger. And that's really what we're going to be doing today is really tackling the coaching piece as well as how can we make, how can we better ourselves as well. So my name again is Tonya DeVane, and I'm the VP of Customer Success and Product Optimization here at the Omnia Group. I've been with Omnia for 17 years, but Omnia has been in business since 1985. We are excited that we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. What we do and kind of what Joseph spoke about is after you have sourced the candidates, we help you determine if they're a great fit for the organization. If you already have existing employees, we help you talk about their strengths, their challenges, and development. We've been validated 3 times, and our last validation happened a couple of years ago. And it basically was, we said that we measure what we say we measure. Also with that validation, we focused on sales. And so we have a pattern, and you're going to see this. It's called the visionary sales style that we say is successful in sales. So we wanted to test that theory. And so what we did, we had salespeople complete the assessment, and then we had their sales manager rate them, excuse me. And the people that received the highest rating were the people that was in that visionary category. So we're really excited about that. We have 2,000 plus clients, and most of our business, or a big percentage of our business, is insurance. So we have a lot of knowledge in regards to insurance companies, offices, and what they need. So today, what we're going to do is really talk about the sales style. We're going to talk about how you can leverage the diversity, talk about some coaching techniques, as well as creating the synergy in regards to making a strong team. But before we get into that, let's talk about the numbers, right? So I always like to have a little data when I'm talking to kind of set the tone. So the headlines and what we know is that 82% of managers think that they coach well, and that came from a Gallup poll. And we have 70% of reps with coaching will outperform reps without coaching that have not been coached, excuse me. But really what we're seeing is behind the scenes, and there's under 5% of managers' time that goes to coaching, but we see 82% of them think that they're good at it, but they're only spending 5%. And that came from a seismic research. And then 26% of reps say that they, about what they have received in regards to effective coaching. So the numbers don't jive from what we're seeing on the front side to what's really happening behind the scenes. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Effective coaching is really focusing on skills and not just pipeline. And this is for yourself as well, because when we're talking about coaching, it's not just about, the leader or the manager being the coach. You as a rep have to also be an active participant in the coaching piece. So we also don't want you to just focus on, pipelines, focus on skills and how to develop them. Think about your natural sales style and how you may need to adjust in regards to talking to clients or when you're talking to your reps, and then feedback that builds performance. We don't just need critique for critique's sake. We want critiques in regards that's going to help build and develop my natural talents, right? So let's talk about the mindset so we can go into this presentation with a great mindset. So you have a manager mindset and a coach mindset. So when we're thinking about the manager mindset, it's really, they kind of default to more about directing and correcting, right? There's language is very just outcome focused, hit the quota, make the sale, make more calls, close faster. So we're just really focusing on the output. Also, what's at risk when we have that mindset is that they may hit the short-term goals, but we really want staying power, lasting power. So they're not actually getting better, but they may hit that short win. But what we want is really the coaching mindset. And this is where, you think about it in terms of skill and behaviors. You guide, what we do there is we really guide and we don't prescribe, and really letting you as the reps kind of help in regards to the direction of, what are you thinking? What can we do better? And then the language is really about process and growth. So, we are not just scorekeepers, but we build players. And that's why we have the coaching mindset. So now that we kind of have that, let's kind of test this a little bit. So now you have a statement here. You hit the numbers, but I need you to explain the process. Go ahead and put a C in the chat if you think that this is manager, and put a M in the chat if you think that this is a coaching. Put an M in the chat if you think it's a manager mindset. Put a C in the chat if you think it's a coaching mindset. I see coach, I see manager, I see coach, I see C's, I see M's. Perfect. Yep, C's, M's. And so thank you all so much for participating. So really what we have here is it's a manager's mindset. Now, I know I can see why some of you all put coach, because it started out pretty well. It sounds responsible at first, but holding reps accountable, we definitely need to do that. But notice what it's really doing. It's compliance driven, right? It's like an audit. There's no forward motion, no development. So let's look at this second one. Let's walk through your last 3 calls together to see what pattern we noticed. Put a C if you think it's coaching, put an M if you think it's managing, a manager mindset. See, I see some C's. C's. I see a lot of C's. I think y'all are catching on because yes, this is a coaching mindset. Thank you all again so much for participating. But yes, with this one, what you hear, you're really hearing a shift between that first one. You know, it's the same intent, right? We're still trying to develop and get them, but the way we are talking about it is a little different. But this is more collaborative. And you remember that coach mindset is, I'm not just over here telling you what to do. It's a back and forth. You have to be just a part of this as much as I am. So it's really, you know, what did you notice? What did you see? I'm trying to help you. And we have a couple of more. What do you think is holding, what do you think is holding clients back from saying yes? C or M? Okay, I see some C's. I see one M. I see some C's. C's. I see C-S-E-E. I like that. Put a little flavor on the C. And so it is coaching. So instead of giving the answer, again, you're asking them to analyze. You want information from them. And when you're thinking about this for yourself and you're thinking about, you know, why didn't that deal close? Why didn't they say yes? Also have some thoughts about that as well. Thinking about why didn't they say yes? What could I have done better? And then the last one here is your presentation. Sorry, I have to move y'all over a little bit. Your presentation had great energy. Let's channel that into more closes. So is that C or M? Oh, I saw M. Oh, because I put it on the screen. Well, geez. Well, yes, it's M. I clicked too fast. I'm like, wow, everybody's getting it right. I've really done my job here with the, you know, putting you in the right mindset. But yes, this one is manager, because while it definitely does sound encouraging, because, you know, I said, great job, great energy. I went directly to now we need to make it happen. Now we need to get some closes. And I really didn't try to develop and say, you know, think about it in different ways. So now that we know that we want a coaching mindset, let's go ahead and talk about the different sales styles. So there's 17 different styles. And with those 17 different styles, they're going to fall into 4 categories that we're going to discuss. If you would like to know what your sales style is, there's a QR code. You can click it, but don't start right now because we have a few more slides to get through. But if you do want to find out what your sales style is, I'll have this code at the end as well for you to kind of take a look so you can experience Omnia completing the assessment, but also get a development report about yourself. It's meant to be shared, and it really talks about your strengths and challenges as well as talking about your specific sales style. But when we see these 17, we actually break it down into 4 categories. The first one is advisors, and advisors, they really build trust. They're usually strong listeners, but sometimes they are hesitant to challenge clients at times. Then we have the analytical sellers. They are data-driven individuals. They earn trust through accuracy. Then we have the driver sellers, and these are the people that are assertive, proactive, plays to win. And then the last group is expressive sellers. So these are the enthusiastic, persuasive ones, you know, never met a stranger, shaking the hands, kissing the babies. Those are our expressive people. So we're going to break these down a little bit, talk about coaching, and give you a little more information. So when we're going with advisor, the sales style. So I put in there what the Omnia sales styles that match up with, that fall into the advisor group. But really, when we're looking at advisors, they have this natural build, you know, they have this natural thing to build rapport in regards to facts, figures, data. That's how they're building trust. They like to help clients, listen to clients. There's sometimes the challenge, though, is that they want to avoid conflict. They could be hesitant to close because they don't want to push too much. But what they're motivated by is really personal recognition and that feels sincere. So, don't blow smoke. I always like to say they like a supportive and stable environment, as well as, they prefer some collaboration and steady progress over aggressive goals. So you want to understand that one about yourself when you're setting up goals for yourself. Sometimes, when we're in sales, everybody thinks we need to have these aggressive goals, and definitely stretch yourselves. We're not, everybody gets a participation ribbon necessarily, but we do want to make sure that the goals are realistic and that I'm building on something. So when we're thinking about coaching, or when we're thinking about showing up to a coaching session with one of our leaders, first thing for advisors, we really want to build that confidence. And really the way we do that is really giving them the information, making sure that they understand, all of the nuts and bolts and handling objections. Maybe when we're going through having a conversation with them, talking about what they may hear. So you want to build that confidence because they do have a fear of rejection. So we want to kind of get a hold of that. Also with advisors, we need to add some clarity because you remember, they're fact driven, right? So we don't like a lot of muddy waters, really. So when we're thinking about coaching advisors and thinking about, as if you're an advisor yourself, how can I clear this up? How can I ensure that I know exactly what I'm looking for? So you want to set clear and measurable activity goals. And listen, I said activity, not necessarily the closing, but the activity. Sometimes we can't make someone buy, right? But if we put in the work, put in the activity, it's going to come back to us. The fruits of our labor will be seen and eaten. And so maybe, with clarity, assigning calls that they need to make a week, or assigning tasks, and that's very specific for them. And that's something that they can kind of hold on to because they know that they're making progress, adding that clarity. The last thing when we're talking about coaching is recognition, but we want to recognize people the way they want to be recognized. Coaching, advisors, they don't necessarily need a ticker tape parade down Main Street, right? But everybody wants to know that their boss thinks that they're doing a great job. But we just want to communicate that in a way that resonates. So with our advisors, having that private kudos, congratulations, being specific in regards to what they did right, is beneficial. And when you're looking at that advisor, sending that personal note, being detailed in regards to what you saw that they did well. And it could be maybe that they just started using the structure that you created, right? Or that you all created together. Maybe they're using a new talk track. So those things, so those little steps can get us all the way to where we want to be. The next one is going to be the driver salespeople. And as you can see, this is where that visionary group falls in that I talked about earlier. And so with the visionary, they are assertive, with the driver group, they are assertive, proactive, and plays to win. They are competitive. They like a challenge. But the challenges of a driver is sometimes they can become impatient. They want things to move fast. And so when things aren't moving at the speed that they want, they can become impatient. They can also become disorganized because they have a lot of things going on at once. And so that can sometimes be a challenge. And then lastly, one of the challenges is that assertiveness we may want and love in a salesperson can move over to aggressive behavior if we don't, kind of harness that a little bit. And so what motivates them is really that public recognition, autonomy, and control, because the drivers, as the title says, they want to be in the driver's seat. So they want to take it. They want to be the lead. And how we kind of corral that and coach that is really posting rankings, letting them know where they stand, track wins publicly, and celebrate fast closes. Give them that autonomy that they need. They resist micromanagement. And, and a lot of people do. Like, nobody really wants a micromanager, right? But when you have these drivers, sometimes when you think that maybe you're just checking in to make sure that they're on the right path, to them, that still feels very heavy-handed. because they really like a just point me to the goal and let me get there the best way that I can. But, we all could use a little assistance and sometimes helping the drivers. I like to call it, like, sometimes we can help them we can be their GPS. Even though they're in the driver's seat, we can help and be that GPS for them. And then again, that recognition. So praising in meetings, highlighted in emails, share the success stories of the drivers. And that's how you can kind of keep them motivated and keep them going. And so we've talked about advisor and driver. So please put in the chat, if you put a 1 if you are an advisor, or if you know an advisor, put a 2 in the chat if you're a driver. If you know a driver, put a 3 in the chat if you are both or you know both. Let's see, so it's 1, 3s, I see 1s, 2s. Yes. As the VP of Customer Success, I have a lot of advisors on my team, where they are helpful, supportive, collaborative type of individuals. They don't necessarily need to be in the driver's seat, but as you can see here, we have a variety of people, right? You have a variety of people on your team. You have a variety of colleagues, and we're going to talk about, that diversity and how we can leverage that a little bit later on in the session. So let's get to our last two. The next one is the analytical sales style. And so this person is assertive, but they can sometimes come across as direct or blunt because they have that assertiveness, but then they also have that facts, figure, data piece. So that's one of the strengths, is really persuading people on details and data. But sometimes that can come across as just the facts. Like, they can be blunt, direct, to the point, and we all need sometimes a little schmoozing, and that can be sometimes their challenge, is that shaking the hands, kissing the babies. This is not to say that analytical people can't go out and network. What I'm really saying when I'm talking about the analytical people is they don't necessarily get jazzed or pumped up by the networking. So everybody, they can go out and do it, be successful, but they don't want to go run a marathon afterwards. They kind of want to unplug the phone and say, I've used up all my words. Where when we're looking at the expressive, which is the next one, they get jazzed and pumped up. Like, they can go run a marathon after a networking event. They get energized by that social interaction. So we're thinking about motivating our analytical people, that clear expectation and structure, and being able to give them access to tools and data, because our analytical people, they want to be the subject matter expert. So the more that we can give them in regards to facts, figures, numbers, metrics, the better they are, because that's how they like to communicate. But what we need to coach on is really how to do a little bit of the schmoozing, right? Breaking up projects into smaller chunks, using mini deadlines, and limiting prep time, because also what analyticals can do is they can stay in prep mode. I'm going to get my list. I have the list that I have. I know the talk track that I'm going to use, and they just keep preparing because they don't want to fall short. They're striving for perfection. And so when you have the analytical, sometimes you got to nudge them a little bit and say, okay, it's good. Your first draft was wonderful. Let's move forward. You got to kind of move them off of the prep mode and get them into action. And you want to reward those actions, because that could be some of their challenges is moving forward. So when you see them actually progressing and moving, you want to go ahead and reward that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about reviewing the data side by side. This is what really builds their confidence. It builds their trust. Using shared dashboards, comparing data. It would be something like, your close rate improved 5%. Let's talk about what made the difference from this week to last week. Using that type, when you're coaching and developing, is beneficial. So the last one are our expressives. So again, I like to call these are the shaking the hands, kissing the babies. I can't think of a better way to describe them, because they are all about relationships. They're great at building those, building rapport, They never, people are always like, oh, have you talked to John? He was so great. Everybody loves talking to John and Jane because they're just so awesome to talk to. But what we want to do is ensure that that relationship that they're building, that we can transition that over to some business. And so we want to ensure that they don't just stay in the networking mode, that they move over into the prospecting and closing. The challenge is sometimes that they can over talk and under listen. So that's about that over promise. They can be easily distracted because they're relational. So different conversations excite them. And then we talk about the motivators. So, high energy, they like public praise and recognition. They want opportunities to shine and showcase their personality because that's how they win people over. So any opportunity they have to do that, they enjoy. And so with that, what we want to do is create some structure for them, because sometimes they can just, I don't want to say fly by the seat of their pants, but they are kind of going with the flow. So we want to provide some structure for them so they can, laser their focus and not try to do everything. And, maybe 3 daily tasks, using checklists can be beneficial. Also, having some check-ins. I'm not saying that we have to check in every day, but making sure that they're staying on task, checking in to see if there's anything that you can assist with. If you are part of the expressive group, maybe you set a little calendar reminder to make sure, have I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish today, to help you kind of checking in with yourself with an Outlook calendar reminder. I do that sometimes to make sure that I know what I wanted to accomplish, because we all know we start out the day, we start out the week with hopes and dreams, and we're going to do everything, but then, fires start cropping up all, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like, what did I say I was going to do, on Monday? What was I going to accomplish this week? So sometimes I do check-in calendar reminders for myself to make sure that I'm staying on track, because things can come at you from all different angles. And then recognition. And so with that recognition, these are one of the groups that they do want that public recognition, sing it from the rooftop, celebrate those small wins. They like the attaboys, kudos, and the congratulations. And so when you're thinking about the expressive, it's kind of in the name, express your excitement about what they're doing. But remember, when we're in that coaching mindset, we're not always just looking at the end. So did they make a close? But we're looking at, are they doing the steps that we need them to do? And are you doing the steps that you need to do to get to the close? We can't always, predict how a client or a prospect's going to do, but as long as we're doing the work, and we're going to see results eventually. So now we've kind of talked about all 4 of the different styles. What in the chat, go ahead and tell me what motivates you. Put a 1 if it's results, put a 2 if it's collaboration, put a 3 if it's data, and put a 4 if it's vision. And as you can see, I don't have a number 5 saying all of them. So you have to pick one or the other, right? So I see a lot of 1s, but I do see 4s, 2s. There is a lot, there's a lot of different ones, right? So we're all motivated differently. We kind of saw that when we were looking at the different styles, right? And so we're motivated differently. So we need to do different things to keep us excited and pumped up. And our leaders need to do different things for us to keep us pumped up and excited. And this is where we're going to start talking about leveraging that diversity. Because as you can see, some people were motivated by results. Some people were motivated by collaboration, data, and vision. When you put that all together, that makes a dynamic team. Now, maybe one person doesn't have all of those, but if I'm on a team, I know someone that has, the results. I know someone that I can collaborate with. I know someone that has the data. I'm going to leverage that. And that's where that peer-to-peer learning comes from. What I don't have, somebody else has. And so I will learn from others. That's why it's so great when we're sharing stories in meetings, or when we're having maybe a little coffee break to talk about some of the successes as well as the challenges. Pairing individuals up with, with a diverse, someone that's different than yourself. So if you're a driver, maybe pairing up with an advisor would be beneficial. or an analytic would be beneficial, right? Because that you're coming from two different areas, so they can bring some strength that you don't have, and you can bring some strengths that they don't have. Then you want to balance team roles. I know with me, I don't have the highest attention to detail, right? So I'm going to lean on my colleague to help me with the detail piece. So like maybe I'll send some proposals over to her so she can proofread it for me, making sure that that is accurate. And then for her, because she's not necessarily a think outside of the box person, she's going to come to me and say, I'm having this issue. What are some ideas I can work on? That's how you're going to balance out those roles. Lean on the people that you can, and then build respect for variety. I know sometimes with our colleagues, they can sometimes frustrate us. And it's especially in that communication, because if you are this analytical, fact-oriented communicator and you're talking to someone that's more relational and gregarious, it can sometimes feel like, why is she telling me about the moon and the stars? I didn't need to know all that information. I just wanted to know this very specific piece. And sometimes that can be frustrating, but what we want to look at is really how that they do tell us the moon and stars, how that can help us in regards to, because we have some clients that they want to talk about the moon and stars as well. So they can give us some talking points. So respecting that variety, respecting that if we were all drivers, right? If everybody was the driver, we would have all the same strengths, we'd have all the same challenges. So while we have these great ideas that are coming up, but maybe, if we don't have the analytics, maybe we don't have the infrastructure in place to get these ideas out of just our head and actually get them moving and moving forward. So that's why you want to celebrate these differences and that you have within your team. And then bring all styles into planning, meaning if we're just hearing that one voice, then that's going to be the solution, but there could be 5 other solutions that we could have if we bring an analytic or an expressive into the fold when we're talking, when we're having a problem or issue. And that brings us to when we have mixed styles in one meeting. So just like when I said what motivated you, we had 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, but we're all on the same call, we're all in the same meeting. So how can we ensure that we are hitting all the notes for everyone? Well, one is, for the drivers, we know that we want to talk about results. So we want to emphasize those pieces. For the advisors, we want to talk about collaboration, client impact. For the analytics, we want to provide the data. And then for the expressive, again, it's that energy and vision. So what could that look like in a meeting? So what would that agenda look like for a meeting? One, when we're talking about the balance, it's going to be for the drivers, we want to start with the results. So, we're 12% ahead of quota. So the driver can latch on to that in a meeting. So that's one thing I'd want to communicate. I'd also want to say something like clients are renewing faster and giving referrals. So that check, I've hit my advisors, right? And then I'm going to say something like conversion rates is 34% this month. Analytical, check that. And then the expressive, we've had some great newsworthy information and some networking opportunities that are coming up, and that's going to get them pumped up and jazzed. So in that one meeting, in a few minutes, I've already hit everybody's motivators. So now with all the people that were the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, I've hit all of your motivators in that one meeting in maybe 5 or 6 minutes. And that's what you want to do when you're thinking about bringing all of these different seller styles together, is really talking about how we can, coexist and everybody hits the high points. Also, we want to manage the airtime, using the round robin check-ins, we're talking about one win, one challenge. And we do this, and so everybody gets an opportunity to speak, because sometimes our drivers and expressives can take over the meeting. So we want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to talk and everyone has an opportunity to express and all voices are being heard because people want to know that you're listening to them, they want to feel heard and that can also keep them motivated and engaged. And then we get to brainstorming because now we've heard the one challenge. So now let's talk about how can we handle that? How can we solve that challenge or solve that issue? You're going to capture new approaches that could improve processes or client experience. You're going to have them think about what are some quick wins or what are some long-term possibilities. Capturing those ideas and having those short-term wins, when people hear those things, they hear the success, when they hear that we are trying to work on being better, as a group, as an individual, it's motivating. It keeps people engaged. It keeps people wanting to show up, knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference, knowing that I'm a valued part of this team because I am bringing information, not only just challenges, but I'm also able to bring in some solutions from my point of view. And that's why when you're having that meeting with a mix of people, which we usually do, like a Monday sales meeting, having that mix and making sure everyone feels valued and everyone feels heard is beneficial. And then lastly, we talk about alignment, and that's really a big piece when we're talking about a meeting agenda, making sure when we're leaving the meeting that everybody understands what's the next steps, who's responsible for what. And that's really going to get us into the synergy, especially when we're having these meetings consistently. That's going to add to the synergy of the group. And when we're talking about building synergy, it's really about in every coaching conversation, you're following the same structure. We're talking the same language. We're speaking the same. There's less confusion. Reps, you really start to own the commitment and managers start holding them accountable because we know specifically what we need to do. And it's one framework, it's one template, it's one way in regards to that structure piece. So we're all on the same page. And the model that I like to use or the framework that I like to use is really the growth framework. And if we all are speaking this way, so the G is for goal, right? And so what outcome are we looking for? So what are you trying to do? And then the reality is, what can we really do? Because, sometimes we have the pie in the sky, like I spoke about earlier on Monday, we can do everything on Monday, but then fires start to happen. So we want to ensure that we are putting just in case a fire happens in our plan for the week. So it's really the reality, what can we do? And then we talk about the options, how can we get this accomplished? And then what will we commit to? If you're using that framework, using that language, everybody's on the same page. And so everybody understands what we're doing for the week. That framework really creates that alignment. And so the way that template would look in regards to that grow piece is first is the goal. So you remember the goal is what do we want to accomplish? And so the purpose is to focus on the outcomes instead of circling the problem. And then as a leader, your role is to help define that success. So I have an example here of what would a win look like. So what motivates you? I can check that, I can check that off the box, or I can check that box. What does that look like for you? And then what can we really do? So yeah, I know sometimes I talk to salespeople and, they're talking about their pipeline, their forecasting. And sometimes I'm like, is that, how accurate is this forecast? Because, it seems a little high. And so really grounding that conversation as to where are you in that pipeline? Where are you in that sales cycle? And, thinking about when it's actually going to close. This is sometimes a great conversation to have because we have great expectations, right? But it's about what can we actually do. So looking at it critically is beneficial. And then, as a leader, it's really clarifying what's really happening. And so really thinking about what are you working on right now and where are you getting stuck and where can I assist? Where can I help? And it's really about the salesperson telling you, as the leader or the salesperson, you're having that real conversation. Where am I getting stuck? Am I having a problem reaching people? Am I having a problem? Maybe it's my email, maybe it's my talk track. What can I do to kind of reinvigorate those things? And then thinking about the options, right? So expand the thinking and encourage ownership. That's what this part is about. Because again, the rep has to meet the leader halfway. Like, we can only, leaders can only do so much, but the salesperson, you all also have to want to be a part of this, want to, think about it. I know for my team, I always talk about if you're bringing me an issue, you need to bring a solution too. Maybe we won't work with that solution, right? Maybe it won't work, but I want them to have thought about what we could have done. What are some of the options we can do to fix this situation? And so, you start making them think about it. And that's also what I do for myself. I think about what is, where do I want to go to? What can I physically actually do? And what are my options to get there? And I start thinking, what's the best option? What is the option if I didn't have, limits, like no money, like there was, my checking account is endless. So what are my options there? And then just start narrowing it down a little bit because remember, we're part of this reality piece of part of the grow template. And so, yes, my checking account does have an endpoint to it. And so we want to make sure though that we are looking at things in a way that is outside of ourselves. And some sales styles, they are better at that than others. And so, if you are part of the expressives or you're part of the driver, you are sometimes a little better at thinking outside of the box. And if you're the analytic or the advisors, you may have a harder time with the option piece because you know the road that has been successful. You're following that path, and deviating from that can sometimes feel a little scary. So if you fall into those A groups, the advisor or the analytic, knowing that I may have to push myself a little bit more. If you're a sales leader, if you have people in those 2A groups, knowing that you may have to push them a little bit harder, thinking that's if we wanted to take a little bit of a risk, what would that look like in regards to the option? And then last is the will. This is really talking about getting that commitment. What will we do? Turning the ideas into action. And sometimes this is where we get stuck, right? We get in that prep mode. We have all of these great ideas, but now it's time to execute and know who is responsible for what, right? So what part of this are you going to play? So really confirming those next steps, because I can't hold anybody accountable if they're not, clear on what they're supposed to be doing. And with this grow template, what's happening is the rep or the salesperson, they're a part of this process. It's not just the leader dictating, because you remember, that's a manager mindset if I'm just dictating. We're in the coaching mindset. So, we're offering up help and support, but really wanting them to give us the information. And then we're trying to guide them, when they do give us solutions and things like that. And so, putting it back on them, putting that ownership back on them can help people really take it, because this wasn't just dictated to me. This wasn't just told to me. What happened was that I was actually a part of this process. So yes, I said I could do this. So now I want to accomplish this, because I don't want to, say that I could do something and then don't do it. And having this grow template is a great way to, one, create that synergy within the group, because we're all going, we're all doing the same things or following the same steps and having that same language. So when we're thinking about, coaching, we're thinking about one-on-ones, and we're talking about there's no crying in sales. What we're really saying with that is that as long as we're in this together, one, and that we are not focusing just on the end result, we're focusing on the steps. So as long as we're doing the steps, we don't have to cry about it because we know we're working the way we need to work. And really then having that accountability piece is also the last part of that. So when we're coming to conclusion, coaching is really what makes a difference. We saw those numbers earlier that 70% of reps that are coached will outperform people that aren't. So we know that it works. So now it's just a matter of putting it in place. You know, numbers matter, but coaching the skills will drive them, really. Coaching done well creates that peak performance and across all teams, because we're utilizing the diversity of our teams to help grow everyone. My strengths are your challenges are my strengths. When we put those together, I remember there used to be a cartoon, and I think about this every time, and again, I think I'm going to date myself. It was this cartoon with twins, and it would be like they would put their rings together, twins activate, and that's really what you're doing when you're bringing that team together. I think my brother and I used to love that. We used to play it all the time where they put their rings together and all the lights would come on and they would be stronger, because we are stronger as a team than we are as individuals. Now, I know sales is an individual sport sometimes, but that doesn't mean, like any football team, any game that has a team, you're relying on everybody else too, right? You're not just out there by yourself. And so leaning on your people is beneficial. And then, you know, one size does not fit all. So what works for one person is not going to work for the other. And so we want to make sure we find out what's work, you know, what do I need to do, that what motivates you, understanding kind of what group they're in. Are they the drivers? Are they the analyticals? Are they advisors? Are they or are they the expressive? Excuse me. That was a tongue twister. And so understanding that piece, so you'll know how to coach, you'll know how to motivate, and then having that conversation with them is beneficial. I know I had one of my colleagues, they were like, don't ever, you know, call me on a Friday saying that you want to talk to me, you know, and don't put a subject as to why, because that won't work for me. So just understanding those little pieces of the people is beneficial. And then leveraging that diversity for results. Pulling the strengths of others to help build and make a stronger piece. And then that structure really does create that synergy, using that common language where we're all talking the same way, using that framework, that grow, that can add accountability, and then just being consistent in regards to the coaching that we do, because it does make a difference. That is the end of the session. I will open it up for questions. And as you all are typing the questions, when I've done this presentation before, I've gotten a couple of questions. One is, you know, how do I know if my coaching is actually working? One, it's tracking the lead indicators, looking for change in behavior. You'll start seeing maybe better discovery questions, stronger forecasting, better pipelines, stronger proposals. When you see that behavior shift, the results will follow. Another question I would get is, what if a rep just resist to coaching? Some people are a little bit harder, you know, they can dig their heels in and be a little stubborn, right? The key is really to linking that coaching to what they care about. You know, I sometimes with drivers, some people are just with any of them. Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by power. And when I say power, I'm not saying that they're trying to take over the world, but added responsibility, leading, training, mentoring. And so, you know, both of those people can be competitive, but they're competitive in a different way. So it's really about understanding what drives them. Maybe this person is someone that's motivated by that power, right? And so maybe putting them lead on projects, maybe making them a subject matter expert in this part of the business. Now you're feeding that power that they need, and now they're motivated and engaged. Or, you know, the money, you know, that's just commission. And so, you know, for drivers, sometimes it's really about that winning. For advisors, sometimes it's about the analytics and accuracy, and expressive is the recognition. Framing that coaching in the way that they need to be coached is very beneficial. Oop, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry about that. And this is my contact information if you have any questions. Again, if you want to try out the assessment, find out what your sales style is. We talk about your strengths, your challenges, ways, what motivates you, and it's written to you. So it's like this is what that can just help. It doesn't even just help in regards to sales, right? But it helps in regards to having better conversations with your prospects. You'll start being able to recognize, oh, this person seems like they are a driver type of prospect or client. So I know I need to hit them fast. They want the numbers. Or maybe this person is an analytic, because the sales styles also can match back to the clients or the prospects that you're talking to. So if you're dealing with an analytic and you're a driver, you'll understand, okay, I know my persuasiveness with being relational may not be the best way to capture them. I know I'm going to need to bring facts, data, numbers, because I know my prospect is more of an analytic by the way they're communicating with me. But knowing your individual style is so beneficial. Also, the members on here, or members listening, if you do decide to move forward with Omnia, you do get 10% off your first order. But this link right here is just for you to take the assessment so you can see what your style is. I will throw it back over to you, Joseph. I thank you all for listening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we've got a lot of great feedback. I just chatted out the link to everybody, the Omnia Group link. I'd love for everybody to complete the assessment today and send it to your agency owner, send it to your manager. Feel free to forward it to me as well. I'd be happy to take a look at your assessments. Casey, if you're still on the call, I want all of our team members at our agency to do this afternoon. All right.
Already drafting up the email.
Okay, good. Thanks, bro. So I want to see it. Right? I want to see everybody's, and we're gonna continue to use Omni at our agency for working and coaching, developing our team, but also recruiting. I do want to ask you, Tonya. Sometimes it's hard as a team member to take feedback. Now, sometimes that could be because the manager or owners coming to us maybe a little bit not ideally based on like our ideal situation for coaching. What feedback would you give to team members, even if their coach isn't perfect, but they're trying to help them to be open and receptive to coaching?
Right, perfect. That's a great question. So it is hard. I mean, and I'll say it for myself. Feedback is hard for me to hear. And so what I usually do is I take it in, and I take a beat, because sometimes I want to fire off and prove, no, I did X, I did this, I did that, no, you're wrong, right? But I'm like, no, I try to go in thinking, even if my manager or leader is not the best, but I try to think about it this way and frame it this way when I'm having a conversation. They're trying to make me better. They're trying to make us better. They're trying to help the organization. Maybe they're going about it the wrong way, but know that their intentions are good. So let me take what I can take from that. Because I know I don't show up perfect every day. So let me hear it, think about it, and kind of internalize it some in regards to, let me look at it. Am I doing that? And then take it from there. But just, I try to come from the first standpoint is that they're doing what they think is best. And then,
And just be open. That's the
right.
biggest thing, like you said. Um, a lot of times when I'm coaching team members, they'll get defensive, like you said, they'll make excuses. Well, I typically would say this, or I would normally say that or do that, but I'm like, yeah, that ends, right? So let's listen and hear. And I like the grow. So goal, reality, options, and will. I took a screenshot of that. To me, the options, not just leads suck. Okay, cool. What
Okay.
can we do about that, right? What are your
Mhm.
suggestions? Should we maybe work our requotes or win backs? Should we maybe analyze the leads that we're getting now? What feedback can you give me on our lead vendors? Not just leads suck, give me better leads. Let's talk about solutions. I don't like when team members only give me problems, and this is me as a leader. I don't like when
Mhm.
you come and complain to me about something. That is the quickest way to turn me off. I put my earmuffs on. You come to me complaining about stuff, I'm like, "La, la, la." I don't even wanna hear it.
Yeah,
Right.
but
Don't just bring problems, bring solutions, bring
Mhm.
ideas. Yes, share your challenges. Duh, this is hard, y'all. This is a tough business that we're in. We get hung
Mhm.
up on, we get told no way more than yes. We think we're going to get a deal and then we run the MVR and it's like, you can't write that, you
Right.
crazy goose. I know things are tough, but y'all, we can't just focus on the negative. We can't just focus on what we can't control. Let's talk about what we can control. So for me as a leader, I hate, or I don't like that word. I do not love when people bring problems without solutions. So I just really like that. I like the
Right.
options, like what you said, push for alternatives, right? What are some things, what are 2 to 3 approaches we could try to overcome a challenge? I really like that, Tanya.
Right. And I really like what you said about, don't, it's what can we do? So focusing
Yeah.
on the steps that we can do, because we can't force anybody to buy, but making sure that we're doing the steps, like what steps can we do, and really rewarding ourselves for the step, like I'm doing the steps, and making sure that we're doing the steps, and then rewarding that you are doing the steps, that you are putting in the work. And
Amen.
you'll feel it, like you'll get more motivated because you can, I mean, sales is hard, right? Sales is very hard. That's
Absolutely.
why everybody doesn't do it. That's why people don't do it, because it is hard. So the people that, I applaud you all that can and do it. But it's about staying motivated, because you do hear no a lot. So don't focus on that. I didn't get the close. Focus on the steps that I did. Did I do the correct steps to do it? And if I didn't, that's where you want to start focusing on.
Absolutely. And that makes me think, I was wondering earlier, I was thinking, which one's better? Advisor, driven, analytical, expressive. I think I'm expressive. I would guess. I don't know. I need to do my thing. But advisor, driven, analytical, expressive, you know what? I think all 4 of those main categories can be successful. They just need to know what their strengths are
Mhm.
and lean into those strengths, but also think, okay, I might be super analytical, numbers and facts, but y'all, people buy based on emotion, right? People buy what they want. So you need to be thinking, okay, I know I'm very analytical, but I need to try to be somewhat expressive and or an advisor or something like that. Maybe you're an advisor. This is what I typically see, Tanya, as I'm working with team members. They give great advice. They're educating the customers, but they're not closing. So you might be
Mhm.
an advisor out there who loves your customers and you don't want to be pushy. Here's what I tell y'all. You're not being pushy when you're asking somebody for their credit card number to get their policies written today. You're not being pushy, you're being a professional. I
Right.
want y'all to imagine as if your customers are going to need their policies tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not 7 months from now, tomorrow. So you want to be an advisor? Awesome. You
Right.
better be a closer too. So I
Right.
think of the 4 main categories, that you went through, of the 17 types and the 4 main categories of those 17 types, I believe all 4 can be successful, but maybe we need to be mindful of trying to be a little bit of the other every now and then, like as we're talking to customers, because here's another thing, our customers are different too.
Right.
They might respond more to analytical. They might respond more to whatever. It's like, what are your thoughts on that, Tonya? Like being kind of like a chameleon? I don't know. When like working with a customer might be a little different than you. Maybe we need to kind of adapt to them.
Right, you do. I mean, we are who we are. So if I'm a driver, if I'm naturally a driver, I can't be naturally also an advisor. But what I can do is I know I'm a driver, right? But I know this customer that I'm dealing with, because every time I talk to them, they're talking about, well, it's about the cost, it's about the numbers, it's about the data. So I know that me being this happy, really bringing them into my stories and really trying to bring in the emotion that sometimes drivers can do, that I need to bring facts, figures, and data. So I can prepare myself. So that's really, so you won't change yourself to an advisor, but understanding your strengths and challenges will help you, especially those challenges, because how can I leverage those challenges to work for me? And what I may do is I may go to one of my colleagues and say, this person is really about the numbers. Like, how do you communicate? Maybe one of my colleagues that's an advisor, how do you still, give them the numbers while, not just being so clinical? Having that conversation back and forth with a colleague that's opposite from you can be beneficial. But really, you are so true. You're so right in that all of our customers and prospects, they're going to fall in these, 4 different categories as well. And so the quicker that you can identify what category they fall into, and knowing what category you are, the quicker you all can get to a meeting place. And it's really
Heck
just
yeah.
listening and picking up on how are they communicating with you. Are they telling you about their son's baseball team? Or are they talking about, no, this is the number, this is my bottom line. That's how you can kind of figure it out and then start working it that way.
That's awesome. And if you'll scroll through the chats, you'll see a lot of awesome feedback from Ariana, Kenneth, Damie, Belinda, Dawn, Casey, Ty. Thank you all for your feedback. I want everybody to complete their assessments today. Talk about it with your agency owner or manager. For you owners and managers on the call, y'all, Omnia Group is by far, hands down, the best assessment provider out there. It's not cookie cutter like Ideal Traits. It's not just some random thing that you pull off of Google. They work with 2,000 businesses, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of insurance agencies, and they've really fine-tuned their assessments. It can help you with coaching and developing the team that you have now, but also use when you're recruiting. Right? It's not necessarily a pass fail.
Right.
Again, everybody can be successful. The question is if they have the drive and the ability and capacity. Like, I mean, come on, not everybody can do this, but like
Right.
good people can be successful no matter which of the 17. It's all about how do we coach them? How do we support them? How do we motivate them? All those kinds of intangibles. But I highly recommend Omnia for the owners and managers on this call watching. Team members are out there. Thank you for investing your time today watching the training and doing your assessment. I encourage y'all to be open to coaching and development. Be grateful that your agency owner or manager is investing time in you, because that's all, like as Tonya said earlier, to make you better, right? To make you better and to help you grow. Let's keep growing. That's something I've
Yeah.
been saying for years. It's one of my hashtags. Keep growing. If we all just get a little bit better today than we were yesterday, that's a win. That's a win. And we just keep
Yeah.
growing, keep growing, keep growing. But Tanya, thank you so much for your time. Team members, owners, managers, thank you so much for your time. Now it's time to get back to work. We have 4 business days plus a couple hours left in this month. 4 business days left in this month, y'all. Leave nothing on the table. So now I'm talking about results, right? Results. Close more business, y'all. Right. Why? So you can achieve your personal goals, right? So you can feel proud about what you did, so you can make the kind of money that you want to make to achieve what you want to do personally. Further, why? So we can actually do our job. What's our job? Our job is to protect our customers. Our job is not just to push product. No, it's to protect our customers,
I
right? To
love
give them the
that.
policies they deserve. So, yeah, results are super important, but the why behind for you to achieve your goals, for the collective team to achieve its goals, but most importantly, y'all, the most important thing you do every day is protect your customers. So let's go protect somebody today. Tony, any final thoughts before we let everybody go?
No, I just want to thank everybody for your kind words. And I love that, protect your customers. That is perfect. That is a great ending point. Let's go protect some customers.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Now let's
Thank
get back to
you.
work, y'all. You got policies to write and people to protect. Get off this call. Pick up the phone. Call somebody. Quote somebody. Close somebody, y'all. Get them the coverage they deserve with you and your agency today.